worship is supposed to be our expression of love and how we feel about God to God. Well, if it's supposed to be my expression, then why every Sunday am I forced to sing classical music? Each person needs to just seek God and figure out with Him, and whatever that is, do it. Because ultimately, it's not the church's responsibility to create the opportunity for you to worship. It's your responsibility.
While I was writing, I wanted to write a piece on worship, and I thought of you, but we never met, and I never experienced the kind of worship that your organization used to have. So thanks a lot for your time.
No problem. So we started the Open Door, and we basically said it's a church for people who don't like church. It was a very laid back church. It was very open to everybody. We had raging alcoholics. We had gay people. We had people who had mental illness, and we had just your usual 20-something rebels who basically hate everything, and
they're going through a phase.
Yeah, and so it was a matter of, okay, how do we all get together and just figure this life out with Jesus and all the shit that's around us? How do we figure all this out? And let's do it together. And let's do it without judging each other. Let's do it without deciding whose sin is more special than it's somebody else's sin. Because quite frankly, in my view, if you're gay, that's between you and God. And you gotta work that out with Him, just like I have to work out, the fact that I'm bad to my kids, and somebody else is a tax evader, and somebody else steals from their company, and whatever it is, we all have our shit to deal with. Let's not pretend that somebody else's is worse than ours so that we can feel better about ourselves.
Exactly.
We're on a journey, and it's not about the destination; it's about the journey.
But how did you get all these people to attend your church, quote unquote? Was it a call to connect with the spiritual being? Was it a service that you were providing?
If we back up a bit, the drop-in center, the staff at the drop-in center became a community.
Okay.
So I had 20-something volunteers who, over time, developed a like mind, and we were all going to our churches, but we were all very unhappy with what was going on and wanted something more. So by the time I came to a place where I was like, okay, we need to do something different for these people, there was about 30 of us, and then when some other people heard about it, they came along, and so we just said, look, let's figure this out together. So church for us, it was more like a family get together every week. So we started with food. So we'd have a meal together. When we initially started, we were doing church in the evening, but some of the people had younger kids, so then we moved church till about 1:00. And after the meal, we would do worship. And for worship, and I guess this is one of your big questions, was about the whole worship thing.
Yeah, how did it work? What did it look like?
It looked crazy. It was. We did everything from. We did a version of Old Rugged Cross that started out like in church and ended up heavy metal. We did the same with The Little Drummer Boy and various songs. Worship is supposed to be our expression of love and how we feel about God to God. Well, if it's supposed to be my expression, then why every Sunday am I forced to sing classical music? Because that's not my expression. Some people Some people just need to move to music, you know, and they're more free and open and expressive to God if they're given permission to express that and to move. Um, uh, we had a guy who came along who was a painter, and he was like, I need to paint, and it was like, all right, you know, he brought in a canvas that was, dude, oh man, it was probably 4 feet by 4 feet, and I was like, what is he gonna do with that? And through worship, at the end of it, it was the face of Jesus. And the whole time he was doing that, you were looking at his painting going, what the hell is he doing? Because you couldn't see it until the end. And it just drew everybody in. So in the process of doing church, and in the process of learning, okay, we we need to modify the way we do evangelism. We also realized we need to modify the way we do worship. And we need to allow people to express, and if, this Sunday, if nobody wants to dance, that's okay. you know our painter painted a couple of times, but he knew he was free
Right.
to express that and to do that at any time. um, we had some people who just wanted to sit and be quiet, and somebody would say, hey, how come you're just sitting? Hey, buddy, mind your business. you know they're doing their thing with God. You focus on you and God. Worship is about focusing on him, not focusing on the people around you. So it doesn't matter what anybody's doing around you. Just focus on what you and God, get that going. And over time, people learned just to do that and to accept other people and accept that kind of worship. Um, and then after worship, 90% of the time I spoke. Uh, but when I spoke, it was open to interruption.
Okay.
If you didn't agree with what I said, you could say, hey, dude, I think that's bullshit. Okay, why? Well, because doesn't it say this over here? Well, let's get out the book and the scriptures, and what are you talking about? What do you see there? And what could he have meant by that? And so it would go back and forth. But the whole time people are learning, and it's interactive. And
It's
it's
more of
not,
a teaching than just saying than just telling people
it's, yeah,
the
it's
word.
it's an interactive teaching. So we are learning together. It's not I'm up front and I have all the answers.
Right.
It's here's the topic. Here's what I've pulled out of it. Here's what I think. Um, and I mean, it wasn't like there were disagreements every week, but people knew that they were free to disagree or to ask questions. A lot of times you see people, they sit in church and you ask afterwards, what do you think of the sermon? And they say, well, I had questions, but I don't know. And then, we're going to lunch, and those questions never get addressed.
Right.
Well, at the open door, it's like, let's address it now. And if we don't have the answer, let's figure it out together. you know or if we need to, let's go away and do some studying this week, and let's talk about it at the beginning of next week and say, hey, remember that thing we left on the table? Well, what do you think about it? Have you read anything about it? Have you checked it out? And invariably there's a couple of people who would say, yeah, you know what, and I think this is the way it is. And it's like, great. And then we would church would end, and most people would come back to our house afterwards, and we'd eat and drink some more, hang out in my backyard. And that was church.
What is your rationale for using art form? You kind of said it, how you felt what worship was, but what is it exactly from your point of view as a pastor is a rationale for using painting or dancing or other art forms in worship?
Worship is a person's expression of their love and adoration for God. Some people can sing, and they do it very well. and and that's become the acceptable form of worship in the church, is singing. What about people who can't sing? Um, at some point, some of those people feel like they aren't a part of worship. They can't sing, but for example, they can paint, or they can do poetry, or they can dance, or whatever other expression that they come with. Um, like I said, sitting in solitude, you know. Um,
It's a form of celebration.
yes, but it's your worship to God, not you can't. I think one of the ways we look at corporate worship, it's a matter of, okay, here's the way that we consider the standard of worship. Everybody's got to do this. Well, everybody can't do that, and everybody doesn't connect with God that way. So, what other ways can people connect with God? And Scripture talks about the arts over and over again, and people dance. David danced, you know. But you go into a church and dance today, and people think, you know, something's wrong with you, and it's
So
like,
what would you say to church people or pastors who say, let's say, well, everybody can join in or enjoy the music or join in the praise without necessarily being part of the singing, or just sing even though you don't have the gift of singing? What would you tell these people?
how can you make that judgment for people? You can't arbitrarily say that because, well, they can't sing but they can enjoy it. That's like telling my wife, she doesn't have to play football but she can watch it. She hates football. She doesn't like football. So if football, for example, is part of my worship, I can't expect her to join in on that. Just like she can't get me to join in on her Christmas decorating. I hate Christmas decorating, but to her it means so much. So that's what we do in church is we say, okay, this is the way to worship. Well, what if I don't connect with that? That means I can't. And we had a girl in our church at one point who said, I can't worship. Why not? Well, she's tone deaf. And because she's tone deaf, she doesn't appreciate music because she sees other people singing along and she can't do that. And if she does, people make fun of her. So she just basically decided, um, I love God and he loves me, but I can't worship. Well, that's wrong.
So as a tone deaf, what did she do? She just sat there, or she danced, or was she able to
For a
enjoy?
long time, she just sat there. She just sat there because she couldn't figure it out. And then she figured out that she could write.
Oh, okay.
And and she started writing. And all of a sudden, hey, Michelle can worship. Why? Because she can write. You know, um, this idea that the traditional church has, that no matter which church you go to, I don't care what denomination it is, they're going to tell you this is how to do relationship with God. Nobody has a corner on that market. Pentecostals will tell you one way, Baptists will tell you another, Free Methodists will tell you another. Uh, Go down in the South where they have 6 different kind of Baptists, they'll all tell you a different way to do it. And the fact of the matter is we're going to get to heaven and find out we're all wrong. We're going to find out that, what, you had a piece of it, and you had a piece of it, and you had a piece of it, but you were so focused on your piece that we never saw the whole thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't even know what the whole thing is. I'm still growing, I'm still learning.
If for someone like me, or a basic Christian, or someone who's just starting as getting their Christian or their spiritual life started, how would you recommend us to explore different kind of
All I can tell you is that each person needs to just seek God and figure out with him what's my worship supposed to look like. And uh, and whatever that is, do it. You know, um, find a way to do it. If you're in a church where you can't do it, then find your time to worship outside your church, um, and make sure you're making that connection with God. Uh, because ultimately, it's not the church's responsibility to create the opportunity for you to worship.
Mm.
It's your responsibility. So if the church, some people say, well, I go to church and, I listen to the message and I don't get anything out of it. And I heard a pastor say once, they said to a guy who said, man, I don't get any meat out of the message. And he said, so what are you studying at home? And the guy was like, well, yeah, I don't really read the Bible at home. He goes, so the reason you're so upset that you're not getting any meat into the message is because all week you're eating macaroni and cheese. And you're expecting your big meal to come on Sunday morning. That's irresponsible. You're responsible for feeding yourself 7 days a week. That guy standing up there or that lady standing up there, they're only responsible for feeding you one meal. So if you're eating all week and you have one shitty meal on a Sunday morning, it's no big deal. But if that meal on Sunday morning makes you really angry because it wasn't what you wanted it to be, you don't need to look at what that meal was. You need to look at what are you eating all week. And I was like, wow, okay, okay. So, and again, it's coming back to putting the responsibility. It's my relationship with God. I can't put the responsibility for my relationship with God on you,
Mhm.
you know, uh, or on a pastor or on a church. It's my relationship with God. I need to take care of my relationship with God.
Right.
You can't have a boyfriend and turn to your friends and go, well, could you guys somehow make this work? Well, that's not how it works. You got to make it work. And if it doesn't work, that's between you and him. And if it's not working, it's between me and God. And God being God, if it's not working, it's probably me. You know. And so we need to take responsibility for that. And it's the same for our worship. There's a long time where worship for me was sitting at home in my bedroom listening to Christian rock albums, and just being blown away because the church hymns just didn't do it for me. Okay, we're here and we're doing it, and turn to page 356, and I've never even seen this hymn before, and I got to sing it 9 times, and so I'd go home and go, okay, let's take out some Larry Norman and some Resurrection Band and whatever, and slap it on and just lie on my bed and listen to music and just be with God, kind of thing. Um, and I didn't even realize at the time that that's what I was doing. I was just listening to great music. But as I grew in my understanding of what I understand as worship, I was like, wow, that's what that was all about.
Mhm.
That's where I was connecting, you know? So we got to take responsibility for our own. If you love traditional worship music, then you're lucky because you get to go to church on Sunday and worship. For
Right.
those of us who don't, we have to make sure we're doing it somewhere else,
Right.
and not blaming other people for, how my walk with God is going.
Well,
That's
in this day and age, it's very difficult to be to be how I could say that a standard kind of Christian, because we don't get to go to church anymore. So if you don't have, like you say, consistent meal every day, well, then on Sunday you're kind of left out because you don't
Yep.
get to go to church to raise your hands and sing along with the choir like
Yeah.
we used to do. So you have to adapt yourself. And what I really resonate with what you're saying, because I realize ever since the beginning of the pandemic, that I really had a hard time connecting or worshiping per se, like I used to by singing and stuff. And I was wondering if there was a problem, but there is not a problem because I get to meditate every day. I get to pray every day. but I just don't sing because I don't connect as well by singing than when I do when I just meditate and just read my Bible and try to figure out a question or something that I don't get. And when I have this answer, I feel the connection with Christ, and I feel my spirit raising. And this is when I know that there's something happening.
Yep.
And so I suppose that this is the way that I connect more with God during
Yep.
this kind of during this context. But it's not per se that I'm not connecting less than I did when I used to go to church, when I used to sing and cry while I was singing. It's just different. It's not the same, but it's not bad either. It's just different.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being so generous, transparent, um, for giving everything that you have, and for just answering all my questions, basically, and even more.
Not a problem.